Hello, we want to welcome you to our show today, the Sunnyside Community Voice, where all this month we've been dealing with mental health. We've had some great shows this month. We've had law enforcement officers, we've had judges, we've had lawyers, we've had NAMI. We've just had a lot of people on the show with us. But today, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We have with us on today as our guest, we have to my right, my left here, excuse me, my left, Mr. Carl Pittman, and he is a conservative Republican candidate for the Harris County Sheriff Department. Then we have always Robin, our co-host with us, Robin Bennett of Robin's Haven of Hope, and our CEO here to my right, Pastor James E. Nash. Now today we're bringing Mr. Pittman on because we want him to talk with us today about what he thinks about this growing problem of mental health. He will also tell you a little bit about his candidacy for the Harris County Sheriff Department. So what we're going to do is we're going to give Mr. Pittman the floor now to tell us a little bit about himself. Mr. Pittman?
Thank you very much, all of you, for allowing me to be here today.
Thanks for joining us.
It is something that is near to my heart, is really being in a position, as I've been blessed to be a law enforcement officer for many years, to be able to help people and to be able to solve problems. That's really what a law enforcement officer is called to do. And with my background, I'm a former United States Marine, former business owner, and as I've said, many years in law enforcement. It has prepared me to deal with the issues that I am aware of as it relates to law enforcement. And in essence, the sheriff must be the sheriff to everybody in the community that he serves. And so we cannot pick and choose who we serve, and just as we should not pick and choose the laws that we enforce.
Well, right now there's a hot topic going on, and you know that. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about what we can do to alleviate this problem. We talk about the Harris County jail system, where there is so many mentally ill inmates. We talk about the overcrowding, and we would just like to get your take on what do you think about what's going on with the overcrowding? Is that a problem that can be fixed? Is that something that we can work with to help some of the inmates in there? There's just a lot of questions that are out there that our audience, might want to know about. So what is your take on that?
Well, my take for sure, mental illness as it relates to those that are in custody or coming into custody of the sheriff in Harris County is a problem. And I believe that many folks, that if you are not familiar with the jails and if you don't see it every day, it's just not at the forefront of what is in your mind. So when we talk about people that are being arrested, many of these folks, in conjunction with their mental illness, they have substance abuse problems, alcohol, drugs, and their bodies are not in the best shape to begin with. And so just as a byproduct of the mental illness, it is going to require some very special concerns that we have to deal with these folks, because everyone, regardless of what you're in jail for, where you're from, we have to treat them with fairness and dignity, and we have to do that in a professional manner. But one of the big things that everybody talks about is, of course, cost. We do not have unlimited funds to do this. So we have to think outside the box when it comes to solving some of these problems. But one of the things that in mental illness I'm often, that I look at, is when someone comes to jail, and particularly someone that we have not encountered in our jail system before, we need to have a system in place that can evaluate this person. Because honestly, I know for a fact that some folks will come to jail, and because they believe that, well, you know, if I have a mental problem, maybe that will help me on my criminal side, and you have some fabrication. I know that exists, and I don't say that to make light of those folks that truly have mental conditions. Well, with those that truly have mental conditions, you know, I am a big proponent of looking to the community, looking into some of these places, outreach places in the community that we can put some of these folks, because jail, if mental illness is the problem, jail is not the place to try to remedy those issues.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely.
It's just not. And so, you know, we have to be cognizant of the fact that if someone is truly in mental distress, the courts have a situation where, of course, they have to deal with, you know, remedy for the cause that they're in jail, or that they're going to put them in jail. And as the sheriff, I'm going to be charged with, okay, here you go, here's an inmate, and we got to do something with this person. And so one of the things that I know that we have to do, I've spoken about it many times over the last few months, is I think in order to be able to satisfy the current constraints that we have in our jail system here in Harris County, we have a limited amount of space. And with that said, we might do us some good to consider looking to the state to find a way to allow us to house inmates that have already been sentenced in a fashion more consistent with how the state is allowed when they go to TDC, when they go to the Texas state prisons. And so, you know, many of these things are probably all these things are financially, economically driven. It is a huge dollar cost. We must look at the personnel that we have evaluating these people. I think we have to have constant oversight. We don't want to have an entity that is going to say, well, everyone that comes to jail that says they have a mental problem, we're just going to give them some drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we can't do that.
Exactly, exactly.
And so I think we have to be responsible. I would be a fan, since when we're dealing in the medical arena, that we should ask, as a sheriff's office, as the medical portion of the sheriff's office, to ask if this person has a history. They probably have a doctor somewhere out in the community. They probably have prescriptions out in the community. So I think we need to spend some time and verify that this person truly has an existing problem. Because if you just get to jail and all of a sudden, I have a problem. Well, the problem just may be your conduct, and not a mental issue.
Exactly, exactly.
Right,
so, Pastor, you have some questions for us?
Ms. Pittman, I certainly thank you for coming on the program with us. And we know that's a big problem, mental illness and also mental disorders inside the jailhouse. What the hands-on as far as the sheriff concerned, when somebody come in, do the sheriff have any input into the evaluation of a person that comes into jail as far as their mental capacity? What part does the sheriff play?
Well, you know, obviously that becomes a medical question. And I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know that we've had a sheriff in the chair that is a medical or a psychiatrist. And so some of those questions are going to have to be deferred to those properly trained to make those determinations. But what the sheriff can do is the sheriff can impose oversight over how we go about assessing these folks, how we go about treating them, which medications are most effective and most cost effective, because we are dealing with taxpayer money here. And so, you know, this is, you know, part of, in what the introduction was, a conservative talks about, you know, we don't have an unlimited amount of money. And we just, I don't know about you three, but I just don't. And so with that said, you have to sit down with folks who truly understand mental illness and come up with a plan of attack that will be effective in dealing with the problem, that will be cost effective to the taxpayer, and that ultimately will put this person who is, if they're truly in distress, we have to do something. We cannot just simply say we're going to put you in a cell and we're going to close the door, we're going to give you your meals a day, because that just comes down to right and wrong, and that's not right. And we have to do better than that.
So what really disturbs me is the fact that I know, as far as budgeting, that the money's not there. It's not available now for the medical treatment necessary on a continual basis, and it troubles me because each day they're turning numbers of people out that probably walk the street 3 or 4 days and end up right back into the jail. And these people come back with the same mental capacity that they leave out of jail with. And it bothers me because when they're talking about cutting funding for the program, that's disturbing because a lot of these people really, not just, you said they might have another problem, but those that have mental disorders, it troubles me that a person that have that kind of problem, walking around, no treatment, no medication, with a tendency sometimes to get involved in deeper problems. So what would you look at the sheriff as far as that? You go to legislation and try to get funding or seek. How would you do? What do you think about it as far as funding?
Well, you know, I look at, and just to give you an example, when we talk about funding, and I think if we look back at about 2006, 2007 budget year, Sheriff's Office was working on approximately a $270 million budget. We fast forward to today. A budget recently approved, we're right about $400 million. And what I find that is interesting and significant is the Sheriff's Office has not gotten larger. We've had a hiring freeze in effect for virtually a year and a half. And my question is, what are we doing with the money? And so part of it is, you know, my plan is to come in and do a zero-based budget, and I mean a real one. I mean, if we get down to counting pens and pencils and how we spend your money. You know, if I want to go out and buy myself something with my money, that's my business. But when I'm spending your money, I've got to bring that thought. As a businessman, I was a broker, a real estate broker, and we talk about fiduciary duty. And that is a duty that I owe to you, the taxpayer, higher than a duty I owe to myself. And that is something not only the sheriff, every elected official ought to bring that sense to their office. And so, but you know, we go back to, you have to know about it in order to be able to do something about it. So you have to be willing to, if you don't know, don't pretend like you do. Go ask someone who does.
That's right.
Go spend some time. Read a book, go to a class, go to a seminar, but you just can't sit back and pretend, well, if I do nothing, it's going to go away. So to answer your question, we must take a look at the money that we have. I believe that the money is there to deal with these problems, but we've got to be willing to go in and make those tough cuts in other places that are not necessary. It's every home in Houston. You have things that you know that you got to pay. If you have a mortgage or you got rent, you might want to pay one of those because you don't want to sleep outside. You know, you got to keep your lights on and because it gets real hot, and I don't want my air conditioner. So we have things that we know we have to do. Those are the things that thinking I would bring to the sheriff's office, that same thinking. These are the things we have to get right. Patrol, number of deputies out on the streets. When somebody steals something from you, you want somebody to look into that, don't you? We have to be able to have the assets available to do that. And just as with mental illness, this is not going to go away. I read a study.
No, it's not going to.
I read a study, and I think it was quite a few years old, but it talked about 11 million folks a year are processed into our local jail system, which is countrywide, 11 million. And of that 11 million, 800,000 suffer from substantial mental illness. And that study, I believe, that I read was about a 2001 study. That's 10 years old. Do you think the problem's gotten worse? I think it has. I think it has. And so this all comes down to, you got to set your priorities. And the priorities, number one priority, me as sheriff, is to keep this community safe. Not about worrying about getting reelected. It's keeping you safe.
That's right.
And if I do my job and I am fair to the entire community,
That's right.
I don't have to worry about the rest. I'll let the results. I'll let my good work
That's right.
Let
speak
my
for
work
itself.